Saving a job does not seem to have as much value as creating a job. Do not ask me why. I'd have thought it was a lot cheaper and easier to save a job than to build a new one. Okay, today I'm on my way to see a manufacturer who wants to buy their land and their unit, and they are trying to put together a financial package, and part of that, obviously they'll have a mixture, right? Their own money, lending from the bank perhaps, and also grant funding if you can get it. Now I think they can get it, and part of my role in business support is to know where to look and how to apply. Literally, that is the added value, is having an insight into putting together strong applications that awarding panels respond positively to. We can do that because I have sat on awarding panels, so I kind of know what they want to hear and what they are looking for and how to make their life easier. Okay, so I'll go and see exactly what the situation is regarding funding today, and I'll update you later. Manufacturer, and I've spent 2 hours talking about grant funding. Brace yourselves, this will not be the most exciting 8 minutes of your life, but it might be important. What did we do? Well, the first thing I said was, what exactly do you want to spend the money on? I know they'd already told me land and premises, but you know, exactly what do you want to spend the money on? Because the way grant funders work is a risk and impact, and most government funded schemes evaluate impact based on job creation. In simple terms, the amount of money they give you is based on how many people you put on your shop floor or in your business, and the quality of them. It's a bit controversial, isn't it? And that started a conversation a minute ago with the owner of that company, because he employs qualified craftspeople, right? And I said, how many of your future employees will have academic qualifications, and what level? Degree level, master's level, diploma, A levels? She said, what? Why do you care? I said, well, I don't care. But the schemes do care about the quality of the jobs you create and where you create them. She said, well, this is a nonsense, because my husband was on site last week in London and met somebody who had a master's in manufacturing. I can't tell you exactly what it was because it will give away who I was speaking to a bit, but you know, a master's degree in being a craftsperson, and said that person hadn't got a clue how to make the quality of work that was required. Well, of course they don't, because in crafts people's work you learn by experience, hands-on. So she was, what's the word? Not impressed with that criteria, that her workers who are highly skilled craftspeople might not be perceived to be the highest quality of job. And nor am I. And I bet, nor is anyone at the scheme. But that is how Europe and the government evaluate quality of job qualifications. So we did that, and then I said, all right, why would you even bother? This land and premises is going to cost you 6 figures. You're already here, and you're already working, and you're already making money, so why take the risk? And again, that is what a funder will be thinking. They'll be thinking, why? What's the impact? Will it safeguard the jobs? I mean, that's worth saying. They're looking for job creation, but they're also looking for you to save the jobs you already have, as in prevent job losses. And she said, well, I'm going to do that. My opinion, I'm afraid, again, sadly, saving a job does not seem to have as much value as creating a job. Do not ask me why. I'd have thought it was a lot cheaper and easier to save a job than to build a new one. But, in my opinion, thinking of what people want to hear, as a pitch, we want job creation. Safeguarding, they say, is good, but I don't think it has as much impact. So I said, what will happen when you spend this money? Why would you do it? Well, the real world scenario, which you should include in your application, is the owners of this property are elderly and they are looking to sell. Looking being the word, nothing tangible. They are looking to sell. We've heard that, they've told us. And that is a threat to the company because they have to give us 6 months notice. That is not very long for a company which is, approaching 500, well over 500,000 pounds turnover up to £1 million per year, with employees in a rural area, with machinery. That is not very long to relocate a business, and the disruption could kill your business. So that has made them a bit afraid, rightly so. It's sowing a seed of uncertainty. Said, right, the current owners are elderly. We know they have a valuation on the company, and that's made us very nervous. But also, on the plus side, if we did own these premises, we'd change everything. We would relocate our manufacturing shop, like the assembly part of the line. That would free up more space. If we have more space, we can employ more people, skilled people. Forget the qualifications bit. Skilled people. If I have more skilled people, I can do more work. If I have more work, I can sell more work. If I sell more work, I get more money. It pays for the expansion. And so, why I sort of say it that way is that's what a funder wants to hear. That you have a very clear equation. That was an equation, right? If I do A, it equals B, and it flows round. They want to see a coherent equation, which at the end of it creates jobs that are secure. Long-term employment in rural areas. That is what this is about. That is why they will give this company potentially £50,000 as a grant, not a loan. Job creation, rural area, long-term. Okay, so it has to add up. So we scope out the scenario, basically. You want to buy this because the benefit to the business is actually countering a threat. When you have it, creatively and constructively, you will rearrange the entire layout of the business and you will invest more money. That's the sales pitch, isn't it? It's one of the criteria on every grant form is displacement and would you have done it anyway? They don't call it that, but would you have done this anyway? And if the answer is yes, or the conclusion is yes, they don't give you the money. And so what you have to say is, in this scenario, which is true, we are not going to invest in business growth when our future is hanging by a thread of 6 months' notice, and we know that our elderly landowners are seeking, or at least speculating, about selling. We will stop investing, which means the jobs just became more at risk because the business growth is plateaued. Now, we're building up and they call it the expression of interest, but we're calling up it the minimum amount of information to demonstrate why grant funding is justified in this scenario. Okay? Which is, any company will not invest in uncertainty. This scenario is uncertainty. Those jobs, as a result, in the long term, need safeguarding. Then we said, let's put more detail on this. You've said you're going to relocate the workshop and move it around. You've said you're going to, take on some more people. I want to know who. Just give me the employee list, the new employee list. And it was a couple of craftspeople, manufacturers. You have to think really realistically about this. You have to think, if this happened, if turnover went up by 40%, I think it was, if that actually happened, what's the impact? What do I actually really need to do? Not the jobs I've already thought of. They're the obvious ones. What else happens? Of course, what happens is I have to deal with 40% more admin. That's a person. So we have to add an administrator to a manufacturing proposal, an office person, to say someone needs to be employed and I need to pay for them to produce the paperwork and deal with the added flow of work through the company. And so we write a list of those people, and we chucked in an apprentice for good measure, a 16-year-old apprentice. 8,000 quid a year. And I said, don't you want a 21-year-old? They're a bit older, a bit more experienced. Because no, they could come in from college, they think they know what they're doing, they do it their way, and we'd rather have somebody 16 invest in them long term and mould them into what we need. Okay, that makes sense to me. So what have I created in the space of a couple of hours? Need. Why do you need to do it? Uncertainty. What does that mean to you as a business? It means we will not invest. We will not grow the company. We cannot grow the company for space, but apart from that, emotionally, we're not going to spend money in a scenario where we might have to move in 6 months. What does that mean to the company? It means the jobs need safeguarding, because if I don't continuously grow, I stall, I stagnate, and I go another way down. Okay? And then we said, well, all right, how much money do you need? And what I've always been told, what I've always heard, and what I believe, these schemes generally want £6,000 to £8,000 of value. What that means is, you create a job, I'll give you a grant of £6,000 to £8,000. You create 5 jobs, I'll give you a grant between £30,000 and £40,000. It's a good equation. Well, that was thrilling, but quite valuable to a business.